Yeah.
Welcome to the Gravity Well podcast, where you and we break down heavy ideas into small buckets you and we can handle. Your mission and our mission is simple. Help us work through your dilemmas in conversation and process. Together, you, we, and your community will face our dilemmas and make the world a better place for all. Jenny?
In the spirit of truth, I acknowledge I am a settler on stolen Blackfoot Treaty 7 territory and Métis Districts 5 and 6 lands. I take reconciliation by seeking the wisdom of elders and individuals who aim to restore water, air, land, life, or community. A healthy living relationship with the earth and each other is our guide. Okay, thrilled to have some both familiar and new faces in the room today. So we have Neil and Christina and Joyce from the Sundre area, and we have Ian and Mike that are in close to my hometown, Sturgeon County area. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone. So we're here to talk again about gravel and water issues that we're seeing in many sensitive areas in Alberta. So Sturgeon County, Sundre, down in Big Hill Springs, and I'm sure there's a couple others that I'm not aware of. But anyway, my point is we're back here to talk about what's going on in terms of water, both loss and contamination that's being seen in offsetting wells, and hear how hard this is for people that live offsetting gravel and what it means in your lives. It's pretty shocking to talk to you guys every time, the amount of stuff that you have to take on in your personal life with these issues. And I appreciate all the work that you're doing for your community without them potentially knowing about it. So that's why we're doing this, is we want to make sure people know what's going on and how they can support. So let's start there. Alex, and I'm sure I missed some stuff if you want to add a little introduction.
Hi, my name's Alex. I'm a jack of all trades, master of none. I have an arts background. I also worked extensively in heavy-duty construction for a decade and private voluntary-based security and crowd control for 21 years. Jenny and I met at the doors and discovered that we at the doors when she was running for election, and we discovered that we had some priority issues and concerns that we could both relate to, and we decided to work together for the following year. And this is where it's kind of landed us. My concerns primarily are the Big Hill Creek Provincial Park, because there is gravel extraction going on there, and that's a place that's near and dear to me. I live in Rocky View County, so I'd like to make sure that it can be preserved for generations to come. We have had conversations with Jerry Beats and other people regarding that. We've also had conversations with folks in Sundre surrounding areas. Jenny's actually been more proactive in that. Well, I've been focused on other tasks, but my interest is making sure that we can preserve and ensure our water supply and make sure that it's safe not only for human consumption, but flora and fauna. So by that, I will leave it open to the floor.
Okay, so we're going to start with you, Ian. If you can please tell us what brought you here and what's your issue, if you want to describe it in its totality, if you can. Thanks.
Okay, I'm Ian Skinner, and I live in Sturgeon County, and we're within the area structure plan, the Calahoo, Villeneuve Sand and Gravel area. So our concerns here have been, of course, the land use decisions made by the county regarding environmental legislation either being not applicable or omitted during land use plan decisions. And my background is 25 plus years with an environmental resource management background. And most recently, we've identified a 10-meter water table decline in the area with an 8-kilometer cone of depression. And at this time, no level of government has come to us to advise of this huge decline in the water table. And also, there's a perception maybe that there's APEGA members working outside of their jurisdiction or area of expertise. And I'll pass it over to Mike.
Great. Hi, my name is Mike Northcutt. I'm in Lac St. Anne County within the Sturgeon River watershed. And we started our organization 20 years ago. So we have 20 years of time spent in identifying the impacts to the natural functions of the water within the Sturgeon River watershed. Our issues mostly are the ignoring of laws, the legal right to water, and the destruction of the natural functions within our watershed. And these particular things have never ever been taken to the point where they sit in front of a judge and a decision is made about these ignoring of the laws that we've identified, which is the the section of the MGA that identifies those responsible for upholding the laws, and for those that are in the process as well, ignoring these laws during the times when these gravel extractions are to take place, where the proper review has never been done. So the destruction of the natural functions are very important to us. We have multiple months and years of information on computer and on all of the endeavors that we've been through, and we're more than happy to give any information that we can to assist people within the group and to identify those that are purposely ignoring the laws and that are in. What really bothers us is a recent issue that's come forward, is what appears to be the commodification of water, if that's a word, commodification. And we have seen that result here in our municipality, of where all of a sudden the towns within the city of Edmonton are also supplying the water to all of the surrounding towns around the cities. And those areas originally had their own wells, and they originally supplied their own watershed. One of them is on a lake, Lake Wadman. The other one is within the Sturgeon River watershed, not just the watershed, but within the Sturgeon River area. And Villeneuve and Onaway have had piped water. Now, when you start to commodify water, somebody's making a lot of money. And once you're under that control, they can actually turn off your tap if you don't pay. Now, that goes against what Ian talked about already, which was the legal right that every human being has to water. And that is being ignored because now they're being charged for water. And if you don't pay, they take away your legal right. In fact, they do that already. So we have to identify this and get this very decision made in front of a judge, where we present this in a very solid manner so that it can't be ignored. That's what Ian and I are really wanting to attain. We want a legal decision on what we're identifying as what's wrong.
Yeah.
This is an article in the most recent Maclean's magazine, and it's an article about Beverly McLaughlin, if you know who she is.
Sorry, no.
No, she doesn't. She was a past Supreme Court judge.
Yeah. So she says this about her job. When they asked her what her job was when she was a Supreme Court judge, she says, "My job was to apply the law to rectify inequalities that were not justifiable under the charter."
Incredible.
So
Is that a new?
That's what we want to do. We want to bring that attention to the point where a decision has to be legally made.
Brilliant.
Thank
Yeah. So I just want to reflect what I heard, and of course, I'm so glad we have this recorded. Yeah. So Mike and Ian, what you've offered is that the laws are being ignored. Everybody has a legal right to water, and the natural functions of the area are being affected 10 meters deep and 8 kilometers wide. That's in your area, Ian. We didn't get into the specifics of yours, Mike, but regardless, we get the size and scope of these problems. And what I want to say is, so oil and gas background, hearings are not happening. Decisions are being made by people that don't have the authority to make them. And what's fascinating is there was just an article about the city of Calgary. APEGA is now reviewing some of the issues that we're seeing in Calgary. So isn't that interesting timing, right? Great opportunity to get APEGA to review some things elsewhere, right? So I'll stop there. Thank you so much, guys. And we're going to let Neil start, I think, for your...
Yes, like Ian and Mike and I, we've been talking extensively for a month or since even the time we went up to Edmonton to the Legislative Assembly. And Ian has been pushing this Section 60 of the Municipal Government Act. And it took me a while to get my mind around it, the intensity and the depth of the act in itself. It takes, for an average person off the street, I believe, Ian and I, we talked about this, is the people around us, even in our community, have very little understanding of the depth of the act and what it actually means. And it has been manipulated by our municipalities. I have had a letter under Ian and I, we were talking, from our CAO, and he actually created a division of information from the Municipal Government Act, procrastinating their position on where they stand and where the AEP stands. Just a mumbo jumbo of words. Now, when I speak with Dale Christian, she says that an act cannot be disseminated. When an act is in place, it has to be followed. You know, what I'm saying is that I have a letter, and this is what the municipality is driven by. And they've created their own extension of the act. And they've been doing this since the 60s, to a point where they're running, like they created a culture based on expropriation of municipal government acts. I believe that we can put forward at least 4 municipal government acts in our municipality that have been extrapolated. And I can't put my mind around it now, but I'd like to focus on Ian's section 60 and see what we can do to manipulate, to generate an outcome from this. Because what I can talk about with what we're at during this appeal, people have gone through this. We're dealing with an institution that is like a clam shut. And to integrate into the time that we generated, I believe, is probably time wasted because we didn't understand what was required. Now, their batting average, the EAP, is probably 99% in their favor. The landowner has got typically no advantage with this institution. All we did here was we tried to bring people together and poke the bear, which is like, if you don't try, where are you? Now, there's a lot of people that we spoke about in the area here that have a sense of apathy. When we started out with this pit, we had 140 signatures. Now we're down to, if we're lucky, we can get 8 people on board. It's dissolved.
Yeah.
They created the dilemma. The municipality is totally inept behind all of this. They have created a culture to manipulate gravel extraction, basically. They have
Industry's favor. It's all about
yeah,
whatever industry wants. And I don't know if I finished my thought earlier with you guys, but the same hearings are not happening in oil and gas as well. Nothing makes it to a hearing.
Well, yes.
Nothing goes towards a judge.
Well, yeah, I guess I could. Now, this Mr. Craig Knaus that signed off on the water license for this particular pit. Unfortunately, you'd have to see the video footage because he's backed onto another gravel pit. Now, this particular guy, he's an Alberta energy regulator. Ian and I were all trying to figure out what his background is. He is signed off literally, and just in where I am with 3 gravel pits, he signed off on all the water licenses with a different definition for every source of water. And we're in with spitting distance, less than a quarter of a mile. And, we're in the headwaters of the Red Deer. So I'd like to challenge this guy's credentials, how he can be a representative as an Alberta energy regulator and keep signing off on stuff and not being held accountable. Seriously, this guy is, I have no idea where he comes from, but I sense.
How long has he been in power? Sorry to interject.
Ian had, and Mike sent me a document, a couple of newspaper clippings, and I think Ian, that went back to 2014.
Yeah, because right at 2014, I'm looking at the MGA right now. There was stakeholder consultation that happened, And then in 2015, Bill 20 was passed. And then in 2016, Bill 21 was passed. And those were two amendments, like additional red tape. And then in 2017, Bill 8 was introduced, right? And then a new Municipal Governance Act was proclaimed. And then in 2018, the regulations were finalized, and there was ongoing advocacy for further regulation. But they don't have any information beyond what they've done in terms of amending their regulation and then reconstituting the act. They don't have anything beyond 2018. However, looking deeper into the dives, and there's hyperlinks to each one, the amount of amendments that they made to this is substantial. It's huge. They made a lot of additional changes to stakeholder interests. And I'm particularly interested in the AUMA's analysis of Bill 8. So I might dive a little deeper.
It's all this municipal government not acting on behalf of population, but acting for industry as well, like this challenge that we're seeing in all levels of government. Okay, so Christina, is there anything you'd like to add in terms of introductions or shaping the problem for us? Thank you.
I think all of our residents and municipalities are very similar in this room. Blatant disregard, regulations, laws, and bylaws, all similar. The only thing I can see that wasn't mentioned, but I'm sure this is on everyone's mind, is health and quality in terms of quality of life and residence. The only thing also that I will add is come up is, and I know Ian and myself also and Neil are working on it, is the monetary loss or detrimental loss, and how they're defining that is of residents. We're supposed to define that in this appeal process, but they won't define what detrimental loss is. They won't come at it from, well, are we talking about health? Are we talking about quality of life? Are we talking about monetary loss in terms of our resident value? They won't define that. So we have to define all three. And that can be difficult and in an appeal process. And we have to attack it from several different areas. And when you've got 8 people on an appellant list, not everybody can do that. So it's ridiculous, but we're doing that. And I do have some questions for anybody in the room, but I don't know if I should do that now.
Yeah, go ahead. I think that's a great way to push us forward because we want to respect people's time. Keep going. Yeah.
Okay. So does anybody in the room know where I can find, if there's an artesian well on a piece of property that's relevant on a gravel pit, that artesian well shuts down a gravel pit within 5 kilometers. So the artesian well takes precedence, and an artesian well becomes the precedent, shuts down all operations within 5 kilometers. Where do I find?
I haven't been able to locate anything, and I had to drill a new well here at one time. I think it was probably about 20 years ago. And we do have an artesian well here now. We're 65 foot into a buried channel that flows into the Onaway Aquifer, or to the bed and bank of the Sturgeon River, or the groundwater. So I would love to know that too. And I am aware of an individual who is just about 8 kilometers, 6 kilometers to the east of me that lost their artesian well. And they are just within a couple of kilometers of strip mining activities.
And we should mention, just for the broader public, that like the city of St. Albert, which uses the Sturgeon River, is on water restrictions right now. Like it's 30% of flow. Is that correct, Ian? Do you know?
The river flows through St. Albert, but it flows into Big Lake first, which is a provincial park, and then through St. Albert. But the last identification that I had of the Sturgeon River was almost no flow.
Wow.
Okay, but one important factor is there's a water license until 2044 that's been approved by a professional engineer, and they're allowed to dewater 250,000 cubic meters of water a day into the Sturgeon River, which is upstream from that water monitor. They can dewater surface and groundwater. Aquifer is what's identified into the Sturgeon River daily. They can divert up to 250,000 cubic meters a day. And that is upstream from that water monitoring gauge in Villeneuve.
Right. Oh my
So
goodness.
that's going to give a false reading, isn't it?
Oh, I
Yeah,
see.
no doubt.
Yeah.
And we have identified where they dewater into the Sturgeon River. From what we can identify, it does go through a number of settling ponds before it does go into the river.
Okay.
There is a hydrogeological map available online. I could send you the link that identifies the aquifer. It's also in the Calgary-Edmonton Corridor Groundwater Atlas. I don't know. This is the first I've heard of it. I'm not aware of it.
You know, I got to say, I got this from a confidential source. I was told when we started with this this whole appeal is that I should have brought in a hydrogeologist to back up claims, which we didn't. Also, like I found out that there's a letter out by Rebecca Schultz that's current. I had sent in this environmental appeal board one from December of 2023, and there's a new one out, and I can't find it. There's also the drought mitigation study done by the AEP that's out there. I can't find it either. And then also there's been a release of the Red Deer River watershed basin study has been released. I went on to the Mountain View County site. I can't find any of this stuff, but I've got these items as well as this big red, the big star, and next to this artesian well. I was told by my source that if you can prove this, everything takes precedence over everything else. And that's all I'm at right now. I haven't contacted my source yet because it's a complicated story. I can't go into details because there's anonymity involved in this. But I was told this is how I should have proceeded, as well as talking to our MLA, which we did back in March. Where there was 11 of us went into the MLA's office. That's Mr. Nixon's office in Sundre, and we have had nothing back from him since. We started now sending consecutive letters asking for a response from our meeting with him in March. Now I found out through a source that he had literally given information to an individual how to approach the environmental appeal board. But it took a lot of just trying to get into his face to find out. These are kind of those points that I've just created. We neglected because we didn't know how to proceed. Like we were going through the proper channels, but we didn't quite know how to navigate through the proper channels. So if this is right, wrong, or indifferent, I can't say. If to win or lose, you could spend a huge amount of time with this environmental appeal board, or where we're at, or somebody that's in there professionally, and they might tick off to the 1% to be recognized.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Neil. I'll just say what I heard in there is, your MLA hasn't responded. There's a letter from Rebecca Schultz that's current that, sorry, what did the letter say? Can you remind me?
Well, I believe it's similar to her last letter in December. It's about how to proceed with stage 5 to stage
Drought.
6 drought mitigation. And now I was reminded by Christina told me that there's Google problems out there because Google is under changes.
Right.
And we might not be able to find data the way we used to. She just
Fascinating times.
Yeah.
Wow.
So anyways, that's where we're at here, which takes us to the next step with Ian and Mike's pursuit of the Section 60. And I believe this is probably the way to go, is to go take it to a higher level. This wheel spinning that we're doing, it's good to poke the bear if you've got the time.
Neil, was this letter, was this the one July 8th, 2024?
It could be. I have very little knowledge except a few points. I talked to an individual at 10 o'clock at night 2 weeks ago, and I haven't heard anything back since.
Okay, so it's 54 pages long, this letter. Is that the one?
That I don't know.
Is
Yeah.
this,
Okay.
did you
I think I
find it
found it.
July 8th, 2024?
Correct.
Yeah, maybe email it to the group, Alex. Thank you. We can talk
Yeah.
look at that.
Yeah, I can.
Actually, okay. So I just want to cover. Christina? Did we answer? You had more questions, or was there another question?
Well, drought mitigation study, we were looking for that if anyone had it. And there was one more, but Neil mentioned it. It was the
Red Deer River Watershed Basin Study.
the Red Deer River.
Right, the model. Let's see the outcome of the modeling.
Yeah,
Right?
the trouble is with this, how much stuff are we going to, we've got one more kick at pushing information into the Environmental Appeal Board, providing that the chair deems it acceptable. They've taken us over the point already where we can't submit any more data. And I argued with them, so they give us a window of opportunity if they decide to look at it. And I don't know how much more we have to submit, like they've already made a decision. The problem was that Westcamp put a letter out on July the 18th, and then they shut us down pretty much on July the 25th. And I'm not quite understanding the process. They did give us quite an extensive window in the earlier stages from June because we submitted data, but I kept asking for extensions, but they would only give you 2 weeks at a time and nothing more. So I said, well, times are changing. Stuff is coming in. I said, how can you put a timeline on some of this stuff?
Yeah, when the data
Yeah.
the data is newer than the timeline was started, kind of thing. Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, they got tired of us.
Yeah. Well, and like you said, it's always this fast process. Few people, as you said, Christina, like they limit the number of people that can participate in this problem, and so that it's a lot of work for a very small group of people that are impacted, and it's way beyond that. Like I just want to say again, 8 kilometers wide. Like this is that is a lot of residents within that area, and it's not being represented adequately in that way. And of course, that can be bigger depending on this drought condition that we're in too. So, okay, I want to flip back to you, Ian and Mike. Can you guys talk a bit about this commodification of water that you were describing? So to me, it's what I, in our brief conversation ahead of this, you were talking about how people are losing their wells and they're expected to put in a cistern, which I know, Neil, you guys can talk about this as well, but we'll let them go first and then you can add to it. But Neil, if you can talk about the AHS recommendations when they're done, that'd be awesome. Okay, go ahead, Ian.
Okay, just for an example, water was brought into Villeneuve, and this is dated 2001. And the cost to bring the pipeline in was anywhere from 1.3 million to 2 million. So everyone in Villeneuve that lost water now has water plumbed into their homes at a monthly cost. And just a little bit of information. So I questioned Sturgeon County about the number of active bulk water accounts within Sturgeon County at all of their bulk stations. So there's 3,272 accounts, active accounts. And is there a maximum amount of water that an account can use per year? Presently, there's no maximum allotment currently. However, administration is considering options on implementing maximum daily account allotments during water demand measure events. So how much water is used per year at the bulk station? They said about a 208,904 cubic meters a year. So I looked at that and I said, well, what does an average family use in Edmonton? And on EPCOR's site, it says average household has 2.4 people and consumes about 18.5 cubic meters per month. So in Sturgeon County, that would equal 941 households annually.
Yeah, thank you.
Right. This particular operation is done to allow development in the area to actually have no rules and regulations to follow, because once they can get somebody locked into a system where they have to pay for the water, then they don't have to worry about the groundwater and the surface water and the natural functions of the area, the general area. They can do that completely. Just an example is the town of Woburn, that's on Lake Woburn. They used to utilize the lake itself for drinking water and wells that were dependent upon inflow from the lake. And they lost that capability, and especially after the oil spill on the train wreck that they had there. And so all of a sudden, now they are paying, they live on a lake. This is really crazy. They live on a lake and they pipe water from the city of Edmonton. So this
It's
takes
bananas.
the town of Onaway as well. And all of this happening gives you an indication of somebody's dream of what they can do to make a tremendous amount of money. And if they can commodify water, which is a legal right, and take away that legal right that's identified by law, then all of a sudden we become dependent. I hate to use the word a slave, but it's not much different than that. If you don't pay attention to what we do, we'll shut your tap off.
Yeah.
So we see that happening all the way through this the area around Edmonton. It's not just in the Sturgeon River watershed; it's completely circulating at the city of Edmonton.
So just a quick interjection, Jenny, in the new link email that you sent everyone, because I haven't added all these gentlemen to my contacts yet. I just put the letter, the 54-page letter from July 8th into a reply to you. And because you already have these gentlemen in your contacts, if you could just forward that file, because I just put it to my desktop. It's a PDF.
Yeah.
So you'll be able to
I
copy
got
it
you.
to your desktops, and then you can have it in a hard copy if you want to print it out at any time. So
Thanks, Alex. Okay, I just want to reflect back a bit at what I heard there from you guys. So this is what's crazy is like my family has a cabin in northern Alberta, and this had just been occurring to me too. Island Lake, they have to truck in their water now, and it's been curious to me that there isn't water wells instead, like you said, right offsetting a lake that's spring fed and all that. So yeah, it's very interesting to think about this being a very broad issue that people have just been slowly letting happen without thinking about. But Wabamun to be piping from Edmonton is bananas, and Onaway too, you said? Yeah, so this is definitely feeling like a commodification, like okay, I'm going to use a term from physics. So the law of continuity. So if something's happening at small scale and it's happening at a very large scale, then it's happening at every scale in between. So that's what we're seeing here. Like Alex was describing, this is an international problem, but we're seeing it everywhere. I can say without, again, confidentially, somebody in Southern Alberta had said the same thing, that there's a lot of water going around their town, but they're not really having access to it themselves. Meanwhile, we have an irrigation district that's using a crazy amount of water. So yeah, I think there's a big, broader issue happening. Did you want to add something there, Mike?
Go ahead.
If you actually achieve the commodification of water, then you don't have to worry about any surrounding infrastructure or natural functions of groundwater, do you? So you can utilize it in any way, shape, or form that you want. Now, you can understand that maybe cities suck, and that's because they draw everything towards them. Now, they have to utilize everything within their area or as close as possible, so as they keep the cost of building their city down as low as possible. So the very second that they get you dependent on the city, then all of a sudden you're supporting the city and you're paying taxes for the city. And then and you don't see it in your municipal taxes because they don't change much. But the commodification of water is just nothing more than another tax.
Yeah,
So
and
that's the thing that's the direction that we have to be very careful here. And we have to try and stop it at the legal level somehow. We have to get the decision of how these laws are being broken and how these laws are being ignored, and we have to get it in front of a judge. We have to do it somehow. Maybe this article in Maclean's magazine gives us a link of who we can talk to, because that woman, McLaughlin, seems to be reasonable, because she says, and what her job was, is to correct the problems that she has at the lower levels. That's what she says, where it seems like laws are being broken. And that any laws that are not being adhered to have to be taken in front of a legal decision. Otherwise, they don't carry anything, because the people that are making the large amounts of personal wealth or political gain are using them to be able to pull that money out of our system. And they don't care if we don't have any natural functions in our environment. So I think this is what we have to do. Somehow we have to get the people together to understand they have a legal right to water, just like they have a legal right to air. I'm sorry.
One really good example we could bring to the people, is the Cochabamba Water War, or also known as the Bolivian Water War, from December 1999 to April of 2000, where a private company by the name of SEMPA decided to privatize commodified water to the extent that they would charge people down to the droplet, and the price of water exceeded a person's daily average income for a glass. And within 3 days, the entire country went into revolt, and it became extremely violent because people only had a certain amount of time to live, and they couldn't afford a simple glass of water. There were government officials coming around and knocking over their rain barrels and then arresting them and fining them. It was really, really a bad situation. But the Bolivian water wars of 99 to 2000, if you look those up, that's probably the best, most recent example of a highly cautionary tale if we allow people to simply commodify these resources.
Thank you. There's another example now moving downscale in southern states. There's a state that just had to fight back to get their water to be public again, pulling it back from private interests. So that might be a case to look at as well. But anyway, lots of stuff that we can pull together after this conversation. Neil and Christina, can you offer some of your thoughts with respect to, like, what are you seeing? Like, Christina, if you could please explain some of the things that you've learned with wells around the area, please.
Offer my what? Sorry?
Like the wells. Neil mentioned that you've been door knocking and learning about what people are experiencing in their wells in terms of contamination and things. Whatever is safe to talk about, but yeah, thanks.
Yeah, elevated chloroforms. I mean, some people sum that up to, you know, the well casing needs to be cleaned. Other things are lead and copper. But when we saw the test results of the test wells on the gravel pits, they have elevated lead and copper, and that's current testing. So when we asked for what's contaminating your test wells, and in this appeal process, and we asked for the answers to those questions to the appeal board and to the company that owns those test wells, we got crickets. Like, why would you allow this to go forward if you've got contaminated test wells, and it's exact same things that are showing up in my water well, which is I'm the closest water well to their test wells, and it's on a map, and it's clear that I've got the closest test well. I've got the closest well to their test well. And I asked the question, okay, so you've got contamination that's matching what's showing up. And then my neighbor behind me has even more contamination. They're not an appellant on the appeal, things like copper, lead. And then we have, which is odd, 3 times the normal fluoride level just popped up out of nowhere. And they're in, as the crow flies, within 3 kilometers of
West Canseal County.
No.
Sorry, no, West Fraser.
West Fraser,
Pulp
which is
mill.
a pulp mill. And at one time, Joyce and I, right after we got word of this, we went on their website and we had to look at their MSDS for their treated lumber. And the MSDSs came back with fluoride. They were treating their lumber with fluoride, and they just placed their treated lumber right on the ground.
Yeah, I don't believe they have barriers or anything.
No.
That facility goes back the 40, 50 years.
So they just treat lumber over there, and they sell treated lumber, and then they have. So then we had AEP involved, and we made an AER complaint and an AEP complaint, and we had an investigator come out. And guess what? Those MSDSs, they were gone off their website.
Mhm.
Gone.
That's crazy.
Are there any soil samples taken too that could corroborate the water samples?
I asked, did AEP go over there and take soil samples underneath and in around? And they said everything's been investigated and the case is closed.
Yeah, that was around the time that we were
That was
we
unbelievable.
initiated a bunch of 1-800 numbers, multiple complaints in this area. I'd say at least 12 to 16 multiple complaints.
Yes.
And during that period of time, this Mr. Craig Knaus had updated the gravel pits just within our area, dated around the same time that our complaints went in. I finally got an acknowledgement. I asked for a follow-up from the 1-800 numbers, and they said they were out there, the field officers were out there for 2 days, and they couldn't find anything, and all the reference numbers were closed. In the earlier days, we talked about the berm that WestCan put on their pit, and this is where all the trouble started, is that they were hauling dirt in. It's convoluted, mixed up. The county gave them an application, supposedly from West Fraser, but we got drone footage from the gravel pit next door was supplying them top soil and stuff like that. I talked to the compliance officer and asked for the dirt sample. I said, isn't it practical to take a sample first before you move the dirt? And he said, no, we'll move the dirt and soil sample to follow. After that, Christina had a conversation with Larry West from the AEP. I guess he's got about 5 people working for him, and you discussed soil samples for that berm. And then that sort of just it all disappeared. And what happened with us now is that with our AER complaints with fracking, with the AEP complaints, and with our MLA, it's all gone dark.
Yeah.
They're not communicating. Don't forget, this area is a high money making corner for gravel companies. We've got 8 gravel pits within 6 kilometers, and they had
Yeah. Thank you for reminding the scale, Neil. Yeah.
Yeah, we got shot down here. So this
You know
is
that soil's got to go somewhere, though. Does anyone know where the dump site is?
Say again.
That soil
The
has to go
soil.
somewhere, right? Does anyone? Because they replaced the soil so that you couldn't take an accurate sample, but they
So
extracted the
what
soil
happened?
before you could take the sample. I'm just
So
wondering
they-
where the dump site is, because it has to go somewhere, right?
So the only soil sample that was taken was from West Fraser. And then I phoned West Fraser. So my alias is Beverly Sting. I phoned them as Beverly Sting, and I asked if WestCan was taking soil from their site, and they said only a little bit, and they had paperwork from Mountain View County allowing them, giving approval for them to take a little bit of dirt. And I have drone footage. We both have drone footage of them taking soil mostly from Saunders right next door. And no soil samples were ever taken from Saunders.
It just all disappeared. All this, the communication side, the requests just went totally dark. Don't forget that Saunders' gravel pit borders right on West Can.
Right there.
Right there, and they're using the berm as a dike. Saunders actually created a little pond just adjacent to West Can.
Yeah.
They're in cahoots with each other. Like this is like you could spit across both of these pits, and this is how connected they are. And then of course you have Lafarge across the road, and they're just been washing rock for a long time as well, taking in a lot of water.
With this episode, we'll share a map that I know you've given me, Neil. I'm going to make sure I include it with this episode when I post it. Okay, Dale and Adele, I apologize. Yeah. I got fancy and took my screen away, so I couldn't see you had been waiting in the wings. So I apologize. So does anybody have a hard stop, or do you mind if we go another 15 minutes or so? Is that okay for everyone? Thank you. Okay, so Dale and Adele, what we did was we talked about what brought you here. You guys were on last time, so we have that benefit, so that's okay. What your current problem is, if you want to give some color. Neil and these guys have offered that, we're seeing natural function being totally ignored, don't even need to think about it. Commodification of water. We've talked a little bit, but I know, Dale, you know a lot about the groundwater versus river water distinction, like how they do these applications. I don't know if that's what you want to talk about, but you certainly could bring that into the conversation if you wanted to. But yeah, so if you want to just sort of outline your problem and what you're doing right now to address it. Sorry, I had you on mute. Go ahead.
When Neil, I'd like to just address Neil's question for a minute, or his speech. When he was talking about the Red Deer River study, was he talking about the Stantec Red Deer River Basin flood mitigation study that was done by Stantec in 2014? Is that what you meant?
All I know is that from my source, and we had a late night conversation, she told me that the Red Deer River watershed study has just been released.
So that would be a different study.
Yeah, it's not Stantec.
Okay, that's a more
because
current.
The earlier area structure plan was holding the Stantec information, and it's just recently I found out that the new one has been released. I can't get my hands on it. I don't know where it is.
So this is something that the Red Deer River Watershed Alliance put together.
I'm not sure. When we did our area structure plan, and we spoke, we asked Mountain View County to provide the latest study for the Red Deer River watershed, and at that time there was another study, but it was in progress. And my source now told me that one has been released. That's all I can give you. I think we're kind of wasting our time without going into some other accurate source. I haven't understood a lot of things.
Okay, Dale, so please go ahead and explain some of your issues or what you'd like to share with us today. And you would too, Adele, if you're there to weigh in.
Well, I don't know if you want the specifics of where we are at this time with our EAB appeal. I think it's nowhere. We asked for a stay because it is futile to say you can go ahead and take all the surface land off, strip all the soil off, and find the face of the aquifer, but you continue to do that. You're allowed to strip the whole thing, and then maybe we'll decide whether or not, based on your appeal, whether or not we can go in and take the gravel. They've already opened the face to contamination. There's no doubt there. And the interesting part is the surface water and the groundwater are one water. Everybody in the entire world knows that except Alberta. And it's just expedient for them to say, no, this is groundwater. Oh, that's below the surface, that's groundwater. Oh, this is above the surface, this is surface water. What they've been doing is they've been calling any surface water, when you say, well, Okay, you're interfering on an aquifer with the river. There's water there. You're diverting water. You don't have a license. You're messing it up. Then they say, no, we're calling that surface water runoff in their Todd Asen and his ilk are calling it that. They're bending all of the definitions outside of the Water Act or in the Water Act, the spirit of the Water Act and what it says, and EPA too. They're bending it to fit industry. What we've found out is every time we bring up some rules, there's a rule that says that, say all we, and they come back and say, oh yeah, but there's a policy that so-and-so just passed, like SWABAP, Surface Water Body Aggregate Policy. That's my question to everyone. Where does a policy that has not been run through Parliament, where does it take precedence over an existing Water Act? The SWABAP policy, somebody referred to this 2017 targeted stakeholders gathering, where we talked about the change to allow them to take gravel out of aquifers. And I know that it never went farther than that. All the people that were from environmental groups, fisheries, every hydrologist that came said, yep, back off, get out of the aquifers. Your alluvial aquifers provide all the water for recharge. They also prevent flood with the discharge, right? So fill the aquifer, empty the aquifer. That's our water, 11 times as much as you see in that little blue line. Valley wall to valley wall is full of water and the potential to hold clean and keep cold that water. And it's not news, they know that, but what they've done is they've been trying all along to obfuscate what's reality. I mean, they will argue water does not run downhill. And they will argue that there's no hydraulic pressure in a river and its aquifer, pushing the water to the cones of influence where all these people have their water wells. Cleanest, most beautiful water ever because it's purified by sand and gravel. It's idiocy, but it is all idiocy that has been slowly moved towards favor of industry no matter what. People don't count, industry counts. Where we are right now, Adele and John challenged EAB, said, no, we don't need to stay in our EAB.
Right.
We don't need to stay. We're going to let them go ahead, strip all this topsoil off. We said, or our lawyer said, no, we'll appeal that EAB statement. Well, what we've got now is Howell's lawyer, of course, lawyers yelling, screaming bloody murder. And it went to a judicial review. Sorry. The judicial review, I think it was Justice Price, said, nope, we understand what do we call the appellants?
Yeah, it went to an emergency hearing with the judge. And the first judge said, yes, she agreed that they should not be stripping the topsoil and the overburden. And they basically didn't stop. They just ignored it and kept going because their contention was overburden and topsoil isn't part of the aquifer and it's not part of the area covered by the license, by the
Water Act.
The registration and the license. So we had to go back a second time, and the second judge supported the first judge and said, no, you need to stop. And they did stop, and they're currently stopped. AEB. I always get the letters.
EAB.
EAB. I always get the letters in the wrong order. The EAB not to agree to a stay. So that's supposed to be happening on next Thursday, whenever the 15th is.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what
the appeal isn't happening then. There's just a another judge is going to get to look at how the decision was made by the EAB to, well, so far so good. But this is all, and part of why we went for it is because we launched that appeal the day after the election last year, because that's when we got the announcement that they'd been approved, and we still have yet to have our appeal. So we're
Right.
17 months late, or whatever, 16 months later. And our contention is, and they're saying, oh no, you don't need a stay. They can keep working away until the appeal's heard. And we're saying, no, by then the damage is going to be done and you can't go backwards. And so that's why we ended up having these 2 runs past the judge to finally get them stopped. And now we've got, and then the other thing that we are doing sort of parallel is John and I are funding a judicial review of the decision by the AEP.
Yes, you did it right.
Okay. The thing on the 15th is another judge reviewing our presentation our case that states to not grant us a stay until the appeal is heard. Basically is going to make the appeal moot point, because by the time at the rate they're going, by the time we get the appeal, they'll have done all the damage that they can do, and then what difference does it make if we happen to get an appeal? So, yeah. So far, judges 2-1.
Yeah.
McKechnie and crew. I don't know.
Yes. Okay, go ahead and add something, Dale, and then we'll go into some, like, how can the public help us? So if you can lead us off in that after too. Dale, like, what do you want the public to know, and how can we make sure that they're ready to support whatever comes out of this work that you're doing? Keep going.
Well, the public are not aware. What it happens is it goes to the municipality, and it enters that dark room of the CEO, which is the BS chamber. And out of that comes, oh, but we will do this or we will do that, which basically is nothing. Then they go ahead and they pat your head and this should all be good. We're going to do something called a gravel overlay. And therefore, then everybody in the Red Deer County area will know where gravel pits are. Well, when they did that, they took all the pits from forever back and put that in the overlay. Then they put ones that had ever been applied for and put them in the overlay. And their justification is, well, when anybody in this area goes to buy property within this overlay, they will know there's going to be a potential gravel pit, and so they won't buy it. Well, that didn't work, because real estate agents depend on people not knowing there's going to be a gravel pit there, and we've seen multiple evidence of that, and also the grandfathering in of all of those pits. So let's go back to before there was no rules. I mean, you could just put a gravel pit anywhere. All those are grandfathered in. Now, for what we found out, I was invited to the targeted stakeholders thing in 2017. And I have proof that Alberta Environment says we do not interfere on private land, gravel pits on private land. Municipalities make those decisions. That's where that's supposed to stop, is at the municipal level. Well, the municipal level is not going to stop when those councillors, Howard, is being insured by all those large industries with all the money, which leaves us as individuals on the landscape trying to pay to protect environment for future generations, and yes, our own. And we have lately, when Howell and et al. Challenged the stay, they came at us with lawyers from the EAB, with lawyers from Alberta Environment, with Howell's multiple lawyers. And when we go to EAB, and I've been to them, there will be us sitting there with our one lawyer that we can ill afford, and our one expert that we can ill afford, and they will bring in a barrage of short skirts and flippy faces and the whole 9 yards. And with a timeline where we can't speak, so they get 5 times as much because they got 5 times as many lawyers. It is just set up for us to fail, set up for environment to fail. I think what we have to do is point out to everybody that municipalities have given themselves the identity of a corporation. And under being a corporation, they get to limit any kind of FOIP that we can get. Friends of ours just got FOIP from Red Deer County, paid a huge amount for that FOIP, and got a whole mess of black pages. They could have been told when there's nothing there to read, so don't do it. So I guess what I'm saying is that, and there's the setback, the issue with setback, when they say, well, we'll make the setback a little bigger. That's so much bullshit. The setback is always on the adjacent property from their foundation of their house, right? That's the setback. Where does it sound like fairness that you, the landowner, who's existing landowner, who's been there forever, paid the taxes, has to supply the setback for that gravel company? The comment I heard and discussion from one of the municipal councillors was, well, they'll only have to have a gravel pit right in the middle of a quarter. Well, ain't that too bad?
Right. Yeah.
I mean, nobody says, oh, Dale, here's your cows here and you need a setback. We'll provide the setback. They don't do that.
Right.
You have to own that property. So we're facing it so many things that are just totally wrong and totally manipulated. And like Neil said, when they can't argue with you anymore, they just go dark.
Right.
They used to have to reply to your letters. But
well, to get an entire FOIP back, and I understand it was like 150 pages where it was all blacked out, is just bananas.
I don't know how many pages, but I know it's happened to me. It's happened to Adele, and it's happened to Jody.
Well, and it's happening on the coal mining file too, and that's being fought right now as well. So, okay, thank you so much, Dale. Adele, did you have any sort of final words before we let everybody do a quick call to the public? Like you mentioned your thing on the 15th. If there's something that you want us to let people know about after that, please let us know. I'll leave you with that. But is there anything else you want to add?
Probably not a lot to add other than that, I think it was Neil that summed it up really well about when he said about how everything is just, it's the law, the rules. There's 2 sets of rules. There's the set for those of us everyday citizens, and there's those for industry. And that's been our contention for a long time now, and it just seems to be getting worse and worse.
Yeah, I feel you, Adele. Thank you so much for that. Thank you for sharing everything that you guys are doing. Okay, Ian and Mike, can you please offer your calls for the public or what you want us to make sure we push out from this conversation, and then we'll move to the Sundre area.
Okay, I do have a few comments. So first of all, FOIP it. We have Alberta public employees paid with public money that won't provide us information, won't answer our questions. We have municipal governments granting immunity to law, to industry. They're granting immunity, they're grandfathering land use. And then also, the largest strip mining activity that we're seeing that's adversely affecting water presently is the oil sands. Number 2 is sand and gravel or aggregate in Alberta. Number 3 is coal. We need attention brought to what's happening here. This is a major, major issue. Also, to keep from having, using, or enduring one's statutory right, Section 21 in the Water Act, or freedom to use water, the basic necessity of life, cannot be mitigated, compensated, or remedied by any monetary award or damage that may be awarded later. According to the Public Lands Act, Section 54 prohibitions, it identifies irreparable harm. No person shall. So purposely ignoring the municipal imposed duty by our municipal elected officials, according to Section 60 of the Municipal Government Act, during land use planning creates bylaws inconsistent with federal and provincial legislation, and it denies access to a statutory right to household users as described in Section 21 of the Water Act. And as the judge said, it's an inequality and not justifiable under the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. So we need to bring this forward in a legal manner so it can no longer be ignored. There's got to be somebody out there that's willing to step up and do this. This is for all humanity. Mike?
Exactly. Back in the 1990s, I had my tour with the appeal board. And it was obvious that, and it was the same guy that you guys are dealing with right now,
Gilbert Van Ness.
Gilbert Van Ness. So he's been in there a long time. When we reviewed their success rate at upholding the decisions of Alberta Environment, we came across the documentation that it was something like 97% success rate at upholding the rules or the decisions of Alberta Environment. So you can see this is a pattern that is going on and on and on. Now it's all hinged on money. So the only thing that you can possibly do is to try and get something in front of somebody that is identified as a legal or an illegal act. Now I can't accept somebody that says that they're going to disobey the law in a set of laws for Alberta, Section 60 of the Municipal Government Act, and you're going to be able to ignore that and disobey that to the point of destruction to the natural functions of groundwater and surface water. We have a manual that was created by the country's
Canadian Geological Survey.
the Canadian Geological Survey. We have this document.
Canada's Groundwater and Resources.
Yeah, it's called Canada's Groundwater Resources. It's a manual that's made up of almost 1,000 pages. It beautifully identifies all of the natural functions of groundwater within the Dominion of Canada. It tells you everything. It even points up, has a map of Alberta, and it identifies the very sensitive areas that are within that province, within the province. This is information that's real. I mean, it's been studied and it's been authenticated because this is a professional individual. His name is
Alphonse Rivera.
Alphonse Rivera. I have that book. I bought it the minute it was published. And it says how important groundwater is and everything that could possibly identify the natural functions of how groundwater works and the natural purification possibly. Nobody seems to pay any attention to this very, very informative document. Nobody seems to ever refer to it. And these are professionals we're talking about now. And it's been a known fact. I've been in engineering in all my life. And I know this for a fact. And it was stated to me before and identified at a very early time when early in my career in 1962, actually, that the natural functions or the people that controlled things did not like to be disturbed in the way they have developed their right or what they think is their enabling right to do anything that they want as long as money is being made. And so the only thing that we can possibly do is try and identify the weakest point that they have, that we can get some document, like something simple. It seems like Section 60 should be really simple to bring right up in front to say, who has the direction, control, and management of water? Nobody will tell you.
Right. They all do this.
Does that mean yeah. Does nobody have direction,
Exactly.
control, and management of water? And yet, in the law books of the Municipal Government Act, Section 60 says that in that Section 60, and it also makes the statement of subject to other enactments, which is the Public Lands Act and all of those things that identify all the problems that are being created by ignoring those laws. How do we get those laws in front of somebody that can bring it in front of a judge and say, are these laws? And do they have to be upheld or can they be ignored? Why can't we do that? Why can't we get some lawyer? But here's the thing, and it happened in engineering. If you do anything in the province of Alberta that's going to impact the economy in any way, shape, or form, you won't work
That's right.
as a professional. Just like that.
I feel you. I've been there.
So how do we
No,
get around that? Now we got a good group here, okay? There's got to be a weakness somewhere. We've been at this, Dale. It's nice to see you. I'm glad to see you again, and your tenacity is wonderful. I think it's beautiful, and it gives me encouragement that somewhere along the line somebody's going to find that weak spot. And when they find that goddamn weak spot, we got to put it in front of somebody's face and they can't ignore it. We got to think about that. Surely to Christ, there's somebody with enough moxie or ability that's a very professional that can bring that up so that it can't be ignored. Because we can't ignore this. This is part of our existence. This comes from the Creator, our mother. And the mother is the earth. I get kind of wound up on this because
no, that
we've
was,
been at it for
you
20
guys
years.
are, yeah, it's both remarkable to hear you guys speak, how knowledgeable you are, how intelligent you are, how much you've been through the ringer at the same time. It's so hard because it's both uplifting and awful to experience at the same time, because it's so much bad stuff happening with our water that you guys are aware of that we need to deal with. So Neil, can you lead us off with some closing thoughts?
Ralph Klein said one thing. Ralph Klein said one thing when he was premier. He says, come to Alberta. We've got energy to burn. Where the hell do you get the energy from?
The water.
You got to dig a hole in the ground. Then
right.
you got to build office towers to have people.
Well, like I totally agree with Ian and Mike about the Section 60 and try to promote it. I think we have to take this up a notch above and beyond where we're at now. The hours that we put in for this Environmental Appeal Board is it's wiping us out here. It's beyond. I can't say it taking away my entire summer. This kind of stuff. Like I don't
100%.
know what to say, but what I was thinking as well, like we talked, Ian and I, we talked about a class action lawsuit.
Right.
So
Yeah.
to pursue, like if you can pull up a legality behind all of this. Call these guys environmental terrorists. Isn't that what?
Yeah.
Cannot we just go to the RCMP station and say, I'm charging this municipality with environmental terrorism, with the intent to aggregate our lifestyle and harm our water supply, which creates health issues, maybe on concurrently towards death. Right?
Is that a thing?
I just thought about, so I wake up in the middle of the night, some of the stuff.
So here's the situation, okay? It's really, really simple. Consider yourself living in a cul-de-sac in a town or a city, okay? You got a whole bunch of people living in the cul-de-sac. You're on the part of the cul-de-sac that's close to the exit to the main drive. And there's this individual in the cul-de-sac that keeps driving past your house, and you have grandchildren or children around, and they're breaking the speed limit all the time, going to and from work. And they're an RCMP. So who do you arrest? Because he won't quit doing it. Or not, it doesn't have to be an RCMP. Let's say it's a CAO who's breaking the law. Continuously, every time you come to him, he's breaking the law. So all you have to do is figure out how to start this issue. Start this issue of identifying these individuals by name and putting it in the local paper. Things like that. Anything that will bring attention to the idiot that's sitting up there and telling you that everything's okay and that they can grandfather a gravel pit.
Yeah.
Interesting. I think this is something to explore for sure. Sorry, keep going or finish up, I mean.
No, it's all good. I just got to say, just to reiterate, like Christina and I are blacklisted from our local newspaper.
Yes,
I don't know
which
if I'm
is
completely
Well, you know,
blacklisted,
her and I
but
both tried to put editorials in 3 times.
winning over here.
Three times it got rejected by our local
Yeah.
newspaper guy, and it went up to the senior editor, and to this very day the letter is still sitting there not approved. And Christine,
yes,
same story. So what they're doing is they're
It's a good letter.
not only are they put us off into silent running and forgetting everything that we've said and done, they're cutting off our ability to create media sensation here. As
Yeah.
well as, like I said, our MLA so far has not communicated us since the beginning of March, when 11 of us walked in with an agenda to discuss the problems with the water, as well as a second agenda to meet with Rebecca Schultz and Danielle Smith, and that nothing came out of this whole thing. So now we're banging out emails to see if we can get their attention.
okay. But I do want to because I messed up and didn't let you guys speak properly, Dale, if you guys have anything else to add before we close, please go ahead now. I took you off mute. Yeah, sorry.
Well, what I'd like to see, I mean, we tried all these measures. It looks like we've been down every mouse maze hole there is there, and they just keep slamming the door shut just before we get to the cheese. So what I would like to see is I'd like to see everybody, as many as can come to any EAB, okay, because that's where the buck stops, is at the Environmental Appeal Board. And yes, it's a setup and the whole 9 yards. But if everybody could support everybody that goes to the EAB, they don't say, no, you can't come in, or at least not in my experience, they let me in. So if everybody could make a concerted effort to support each other, I like that class action lawsuit. I do, and I heard it mentioned in 2017. The other thing is, what I would like to point out somehow, the idiocy of government yapping about flood and drought control measures over and over and over again, and then putting the rivers into frack lines and graveling out our reservoirs, our aquifers.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just so backward. I wish we could all get on the same message that groundwater and surface water are the same water, and they aren't making any more. And what you are wasting now, you're depriving of your grandchildren down the road, or
Yeah.
maybe even your children.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, guys. I'm so sorry this started late and a bit of hiccups, but this was amazing. And I'm sure we can, I'm thinking we need to do some letters to the editor, get some help from other areas, because you're right. You can't do it right on sometimes, but maybe you can embarrass from afar. And the one thing I just want to say, you said, Neil, which is really important, is we have to upscale our efforts. Like you said, we gotta ratchet it up. So yes, absolutely. Did you have one final thing before we close?
Yeah, you had mentioned a while back, because we've been pretty busy here, that you had a letter that you wanted to provide to some newspaper people, right? To media.
Yeah. So out of this, we're going to write an article and we're going to try and get some letters to the editor going, is what I'm picturing. And So, and I see, Ian, everybody here has done a lot of the writing for us, I can see. So we'll get something drafted and we'll get this out to as many media sources that we can. And we'll go from there. I heard you, Dale. You guys, please provide us with your schedule of your meetings. Because like you said, Dale, I'm happy to support if I can be there for any appeal hearings or whatever that looks like. Things like that.
Me too.
Anything that we can do. Okay. Yeah. So please let us all know those things, and I'll include that in the this episode. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Okay.
Yeah, let us know, Dale. Let us know. I can start driving next week.
Yeah. Okay. So how about, like, instead of us providing a letter, if we can latch on to a newspaper outlet and let the editor interview us, that kind of eliminates us from providing data to them. You know, because
Okay.
how many multiple letters do we have to provide for?
Fair enough. Okay. Yeah, I'll think about that, Neil. Yeah.
Yeah, we could go that route. It would be nice.
You know what? Editors are lazy and they end up writing bullshit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to take a shot at it. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
I've seen
That's all good.
headings that are.
Good.
I've seen just recently. I seen a article that was absolute, and it came from the Mountain View County that was actually supporting us. And unless you read the you read the letter, it was garbage. The heading was garbage, and then they wrote some things that were supporting South McDougall Flats about our alluvial aquifer, but the heading was garbage and the article was garbage. It was
A fairy tale.
It was a fairy tale, missing information, and I was like, wow, this guy Bill, what is it, Dan Singleton? What an asshat.
I'm just wondering, Jenny, if maybe we should create a Substack account, because then we can actually publish the full letters. Like
You
we
have
can
to
do our own
understand.
editing.
Go
You have to
ahead.
understand
Mike,
that
this has got to be the final word, though. I can feel my family wants to eat supper, so go for it.
You have to understand that the municipalities of the local papers, the local papers work in, are a contributor to that local paper, because you notice a lot of large advertising from the county and the MLAs that are in the area. They get to add the fund, or their funding goes to those papers. So you understand that those papers are under control too. Okay. It's the same old thing. Have a good one, guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Alex. I wasn't sure if you wanted to say the final word. Thank you so much, guys. Have a good night. Thank you for everything. Take care for now.
Boy, that was right on time.